In the darkness of the port of Melbourne, thousands of containers hold secrets, but one is different. Hidden behind tons of metal, a forbidden treasure travels, pure cocaine worth millions. The police are watching, a trap is set. Who will come to claim this prize? Not petty thugs, but ghosts, members of an organization as secret as it is powerful. Born in the mountains of Calabria, Italy, it has spread its tentacles to Australia, controlling the drug trade with an invisible hand. This is not the Mafia you know. This is the Ndrangheta, and this is the story of how they took over the cocaine empire in Melbourne. Prepare to descend into a world of secrets, betrayals, and hidden power. To understand its power in Australia, one must first travel to Calabria, the toe of Italy's boot. There, in the 19th century, the Ndrangheta was born. Its name derives from the Greek word Ndrangheta, meaning courage, a manly virtue. Unlike the more famous Sicilian Cosa Nostra, the Ndrangheta was built on an unbreakable foundation, blood. Its structure is not a simple business hierarchy, but an aggregate of family clans, known as Ndrangheta. This network of blood relatives makes it impenetrable to informants and far more resistant to police investigations. Its global expansion began with the mass emigration from Calabria after the war. In 1922, a ship named Reedy Tollier docked in Australia. Legend has it that 3 men were on board, the mythological founders of the Ndrangheta in the country, who established cells in Melbourne, Perth, and Sydney. Thus, the Australian branch was born, known as the Honoured Society or Otter Societa. They did not arrive as a conquering army. They infiltrated silently, exploiting the solidarity of Italian immigrant communities. Their first battlefield was not a street shootout, but control of the fruit and vegetable stalls at Melbourne's Queen Victoria Market. After the death of Godfather Domenico, the Pope Italiano in 1962, a power struggle known as the Market Wars erupted, a series of murders over control of market extortions. Australian authorities saw the violence, but did not understand the organization behind it. Accustomed to the image of the Sicilian Mafia, they failed to recognize the cellular, family-based nature of the Ndrangheta. In the 1960s, to expert reports, the Cusack and Massera reports, explicitly warned the government. They alerted that the Honoured Society would not stop at the markets and that, within 25 years, it would diversify to monopolize entire industries, from construction to food importation. The warnings were ignored. The reports were filed away and never made public. This institutional failure was the opportunity the Ndrangheta needed. While the authorities looked the other way, the organization set deep roots in Australian soil, waiting for the right moment to take the next step. In the 1980s, the world changed. The demand for cocaine skyrocketed, and Italian and American law enforcement focused their war on the Sicilian Cosa Nostra. This power vacuum was the golden opportunity for the Ndrangheta. Silently, they forged direct alliances with producer cartels in South America, creating a transatlantic highway for cocaine. Soon, they controlled up to 80% of all cocaine entering Europe, becoming the richest and most powerful criminal organization on the planet. Its Australian branch was not left behind. On June 28, 2007, the ignored warnings of the 60s materialized in the most spectacular way possible. A shipping container originating from Naples, Italy, arrived at the port of Melbourne. During a routine check, customs officers passed the container through an X-ray scanner and detected inconsistencies. Inside, they found thousands of cans of peeled tomatoes, a common Italian export. But when they opened one, they found no tomatoes. Instead, there were pills. The agents inspected the 3,000 cans in the shipment and discovered 15 million ecstasy (MDMA) pills, with a total weight of 4.4 tons. It was the largest ecstasy seizure in world history at the time. The street value, $440 million. The fact that it was ecstasy and not cocaine demonstrated the organization's business acumen. They were not ideological purists of one drug. They were pragmatic capitalists. In the mid-2000s, Melbourne's party scene was booming, and the demand for synthetic drugs was enormous. The Ndrangheta didn't try to force its main product on a market that wanted something else. They adapted their supply chain to meet local demand and maximize profits, operating more like a multinational corporation with market analysis than a simple criminal gang. The ensuing police investigation, one of the longest and most complex in Australian history, dismantled a sophisticated syndicate of 33 people, and at the head of it all, as the leader of the operation, was one man, Pasquale Pat Barbaro. Barbaro was no ordinary criminal. He was a member of the Barbaro Ndrangheta from Plaque, one of the most powerful and feared families from the heart of the Ndrangheta in Calabria. He was, in essence, Mafia royalty. His arrest irrefutably connected the Australian operation to the organization's leadership in Italy. The judge who sentenced him to life in prison, with a minimum non-parole period of 30 years, described the crime as belonging to the highest possible category of criminality. The tomato can sting exposed the true scale of the Ndrangheta in Australia. They were no longer market thugs. They were a global logistics company capable of moving industrial quantities of drugs across international borders with astonishing sophistication. With billions of dollars from the drug trade, the Ndrangheta faced a new problem: how to use that money without raising suspicion. The solution was large-scale money laundering, infiltrating the legitimate economy. They invested heavily in normal-looking businesses, construction, agriculture, restaurants, cafes, and import-export companies. These businesses not only cleaned their illicit profits, but also provided them with a facade of respectability and a base from which to exert a more subtle and dangerous influence. Political influence. The case of Frank Madafferi is the most chilling example of how this power works. Madafferi was not a businessman. He had a criminal record in Italy for extortion, Mafia conspiracy to stabbings, and possession of weapons and drugs. He fled to Australia in 1989 on a tourist visa and overstayed illegally. In 2000, the then Minister for Immigration, Philip Ruddock, based on his serious criminal record, ordered his deportation. It was then that the other face of the Ndrangheta swung into action. Frank's brother, Antonio "Tony" Madafferi, a wealthy Melbourne businessman, activated a soft power network to protect the family's criminal wing. Tony Madafferi, through political donors, launched an intense lobbying campaign targeting members of the Liberal Party, the party in power. They approached several parliamentarians, who in turn pressured the new Minister for Immigration, Amanda Vanstone, to review the case. The climax of the campaign was a political fundraiser organised by Tony Madafferi in Melbourne. The guest of honour was Minister Vanstone herself. During the event, a donation of $15,000 was made to a Liberal Party forum. In November 2005, Minister Vanstone overturned the deportation order against Frank Madafferi, citing humanitarian reasons for the impact it would have on his family. A man whom the state itself had identified as a dangerous Mafia member with a violent criminal record could now remain in Australia. The final irony came years later. Frank Madafferi, the man saved by his family's political influence, was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in jail for his role in the same tomato can sting led by Pasquale Barbaro. The Madafferi case revealed the Ndrangheta's two-headed strategy. Frank represented the hard power, the violence and crime of the underworld. Tony represented the soft power, the legitimate wealth and connections of the upper world. When the state tried to eliminate the criminal arm, the legitimate arm used its money and influence to protect it. They don't just launder money. They launder power, using the democratic system to protect their criminal empire. For decades, the Ndrangheta had operated with almost absolute confidence in its secrecy, protected by its blood ties and its code of silence, the omerta. But in the 21st century, their need to coordinate complex global logistics made them dependent on technology, specifically encrypted communications. This dependency would become their Achilles heel. After police dismantled an encrypted communication platform called Phantom Secure, the FBI saw a unique opportunity. Covertly, they created and began managing their own encrypted messaging app called an OM. The Australian Federal Police provided the technical capability to decrypt and read the messages in real time, giving law enforcement an unprecedented advantage. The trap was brilliant. Phones with the OM app were not sold in stores. Criminals could only get them on the black market, through other criminals. High-profile underworld figures, criminal influencers, vouched for the app's security, leading to its mass adoption in the underworld. Unknowingly, hundreds of suspected criminals, including members of the Italian Mafia, biker gangs, and other syndicates, were communicating their darkest plans directly to the police. For nearly 3 years, the police listened. They read about murder plots, weapons distribution, and, above all, massive drug trafficking. The operation, called Ironside in Australia, culminated in June 2021 with a series of massive raids across the country and the world. The result was devastating for organised crime. In Australia alone, Operation Ironside led to the arrest of 224 offenders on 526 charges. They seized 3.7 tons of drugs, 100 for weapons, and nearly $45 million in cash. The operation thwarted 20 murder plots, potentially saving dozens of lives. Operation Ironside was a massive blow, an undeniable victory for the law. But was it the end of the Ndrangheta in Australia? Experts warn it would be naive to think so. Dr. Anna Sergi, a leading criminologist and expert on the Ndrangheta, argues that the organisation is deeply embedded in Australian society after a century of presence. It is not a recent virus. It is part of the ecosystem. Public and political attention, she argues, tends to swing between sensationalism after a major raid and collective amnesia, which allows the organisation to regroup and adapt. The Australian Federal Police estimates there are 14 confirmed Ndrangheta clans operating in the country, with thousands of members. Many of them live modest lives, in modest houses, blending their illicit money with legitimate businesses to go unnoticed and avoid scrutiny. Academic research has identified an evolution within these criminal families, classifying them into different types that coexist today. The gatekeepers. These are the royal dynasties of the Ndrangheta, influential families for generations who have successfully diversified their businesses, distancing themselves from street crime. Their power lies not in direct violence, but in their reputation, their capital, and their political connections. They are the hardest to touch, the holdovers, families with a long criminal history that have struggled to adapt to new times. Their power is based on past reputation, but they lack the diversification and cunning of the gatekeepers. The newcomers, younger, more aggressive groups, focus mainly on drug trafficking. They are the most visible and therefore the most vulnerable to police operations like Ironside. The vanishers, clans that were once active, but have disappeared from the criminal scene. This structure reveals an uncomfortable truth. Operations like Ironside are incredibly effective against the newcomers and the holdovers, the operational arms of the drug trade. However, the gatekeepers, with their clean businesses, expensive lawyers, and friends in politics, are likely to remain largely untouched. The greatest long-term threat from Ndrangheta is not another shipment of cocaine. It is the systemic corruption of the legitimate economy and democratic institutions. It is the power wielded in boardrooms and at fundraisers, not on street corners. The Ndrangheta has survived in Australia for a century by being patient, adaptable, and, above all, invisible. The war against them is not won with police raids alone. It is fought in company registers, in tax returns, and in the sustained political will to never look away again. Because the ghosts of Calabria still walk the streets of Melbourne, and they are playing the long game. Thank you for staying until the end. Behind every video are hours of research to bring you the complete story. If you value that effort, the best way to support us is by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next investigation.